Today, the internet didn't wake up peacefully. It was divided, bewildered, and noisy when it woke up. Timelines appeared all at once. Group conversations began to buzz, and one question kept coming up everywhere. Did Toni actually say anything, or is there a deeper hint at something? Because all of a sudden, Tamar's name was associated with more than just one man. Fans felt as though they were witnessing a story unfold in real time, as whispers started to pile on top of earlier speculations. Rumor has it that this all began when supporters observed imperceptible changes, remarks that vanished almost as quickly as they emerged, and unfollowed quiet where there had been noise. Then came the claims, which circulated quickly enough to seem deliberate, but weren't assertions or confirmations. Online users started claiming that there was more than one purported affair. They claimed that the rumors indicated many names, multiple timelines, and a pattern that nobody wanted to discuss publicly. Fans started dragging, and emotions were running hot. Family dynamics into the discussion. Some said a certain sister had known more than she had acknowledged in public. Others claimed that the act of silence itself constituted the loudest reaction. Screenshots were examined. Replaying old interviews gave them new significance. Every breath, pause, and previous quote felt suddenly heavy. The most contentious aspect of the discussion then emerged, a health-related assertion that, according to some, changed everything. Nor formally verified, nor backed up by records, but repeated enough times to provoke shock, terror, and heated discussion. Fans were taken aback. There was disagreement among critics. Supporters hurried to defend. The tone of the story abruptly changed from gossip to something far more somber. What most surprised individuals wasn't only the accusations themselves. It was how quickly the narrative changed. 3 rumors emerged from one. A single query became a theory. The internet has already concluded that this was more than just romance before anyone could stop it. It was concerning reputation, familial allegiance, and whether years of meticulously crafted public personas had obscured the truth. One thing became evident as feelings overflowed and conjecture grew more intense. This was not the end of the story. Not even near. And regardless of the reality, supporters think the consequences might be more severe than anyone anticipated. The change was not a silent one. Before people could really comprehend it, it came like a slow rumble. Initially, it was just remarks, then inquiries, and eventually whole threads devoted to analyzing seemingly commonplace situations. After years of following her career, fans started to speak in a different way, becoming more cautious and less certain. The assurance was being examined for flaws, as if everyone had suddenly realized something had been concealed in plain sight all along. Online reports that are making the rounds claim that the crisis was never intended to remain contained. Whispers soon developed into multi-layered allegations that implied this story went much beyond a single purported relationship. Instead, than portraying it as an accident, blogs and gossip sites insisted that there were several time frames, overlapping rumors, and private circumstances that were never intended for public viewing. None of this was supported by evidence, yet the assertions gained momentum due to their recurrence. Waves of fans responded. Some were taken aback, finding it difficult to match the rendition being painted online with the image they believed they knew. Others claimed they had known something wasn't right for years and felt nearly vindicated. People's emotions running high as they argued. Across the comment sections, both sides were certain they were defending the truth. There was a tense atmosphere where no opinion felt neutral as empathy and judgment collided. The focus shifted to family issues as the story progressed. In the viewpoint of viewers who were motivated to make connections, old footage reappeared as proof rather than as enjoyment. Conflicts that had previously seemed like typical family disputes were now seen as red flags. Silence was described as uncomfortable. Raised voices were reinterpreted as annoyance instead of ardor. Supporters asserted that tension had always existed, seething beneath the surface, awaiting the ideal opportunity to come into public view. According to some reports, private discussions held behind closed doors have become more serious over time. These narratives detailed emotional encounters characterized by fatigue, accusation, and denial. People conjectured that distance and cautious communication had gradually replaced trust. While detractors claimed the behavior was indicative of someone attempting to endure ongoing pressure, supporters avoidance as opposed to susceptibility. The same storm was fueled by the quick dissemination of both interpretations. Soon, the discussion went beyond personal matters, connections, as well as into reputation. Supporters wondered how much of what they thought was real. Longtime supporters voiced displeasure, claiming that the abrupt change in storyline caught them off guard. Others hurried to defend, reminding everyone that conjecture can ruin lives and that rumors are not facts. Opinion battlegrounds were created by social media sites. Emotional posts, screenshots, and fights abounded in the comment sections and didn't appear to be slowing down. Then the tone shifted once more. Claims pertaining to health started to surface and the atmosphere darkened. What had previously seemed like gossip now carried a sense of gravity and danger. People were shocked and worried, wondering why such delicate accusations were circulating without verification. Some stated that the studies clarified changes they thought they had observed over time. Others vehemently disagreed, characterizing the assertions as dangerous and careless. No papers appeared as of yet. There were no formal statements. Then there was silence. That quiet became a matter of conjecture in and of itself. The conversation was fueled every day by the lack of clarification. Some thought the silence was strategically driven by legal counsel. Others believed it to be emotional tiredness, a reluctance to interact with an uncontrollable story. Supporters argued over whether speaking up would calm the storm or exacerbate it. Depending on what people previously thought, as interest grew, the lack of response was seen differently. The tale was expanded to include more names. Previous connections were reviewed. Friendships from the past were questioned. Timelines were changed to support beliefs that only those who were devoted to them could understand. Moments that were harmless were slowed down, examined, and handled like hints. The narrative shifted from what could be verified to what people believed to be true. Evidence was substituted by interpretation. Logic was replaced by emotion. Those who were said to be near the scenario was said to be extremely worrisome. Public narratives can solidify rapidly, and once they do, it is almost impossible to change them. It takes years to establish a reputation, and only a few seconds to ruin one. Under continual surveillance, family ties are strained. When every action is questioned, mental health deteriorates. According to reports, several insiders hoped that the spotlight would eventually wane. Others believed that the intensity had escalated to the point when removing oneself would only increase suspicion. What are the complex issues? The blending of personal history with public expectations was another. Under continual scrutiny, people talked about development, errors, and the expense of living. Some witnessed a person attempting to defend herself from additional damage while navigating pandemonium. Others witnessed someone who was unwilling to face difficult realities. Concurrently, both points of view gained traction, supporting one another and sustaining the dialogue. Communities of fans broke under the strain of the argument. Older fans quarreled with younger audiences. Skepticism and loyalty collided. Accountability was demanded by some. Others called for empathy. As patience grew weary, the language became worse. Even impartial viewers were drawn into the conversation. By the time the talk reached its greatest pitch, people were taking sides without fully understanding how little was actually known. The initial rumor has all but disappeared. The narrative had developed into a complicated web of presumptions, emotional responses, and unanswered questions, much beyond its original beginning. The impact was already evident, even though none of it had formal confirmation. Views had changed. Trust had been betrayed. Furthermore, the story itself had produced a lasting impression that would be difficult to remove. Regardless of the veracity of the charges, a new level of intensity enveloped everything as the discussion refused to calm down. What had previously seemed like far-off conjecture started to feel intimate for many observers. Fans expressed dissatisfaction not only with what they were hearing, but also with how rapidly the story had gotten out of hand. A peculiar sense of loss was described by those who had grown up watching her career, as though a well-known tale had been abruptly and unexpectedly rewritten. Online publications persisted in changing the conversation by implying that the purported problems were not unexpected at all. These allegations stated that there had been times over the years when insiders discreetly asked choices, habits, and decisions. Nothing recorded, nothing said in public, but enough discomfort to make some individuals uncomfortable in private. Advocates contended that private conflicts ought to stay private. Repeated murmurs, according to critics indicated unsolved problems that had been disregarded for too long. As fans argued, the focus switched to how the everything might have been impacted by the pressures of public life. Continuous inspection, according to some, leads to a double life, one for survival and one for the cameras. They asserted that emotional loneliness frequently follows celebrity, resulting in people to look for approval in ways that are misconstrued by others. Others completely disagreed with such reasoning, arguing that notoriety does not justify harmful behaviors. Emotions were running high, and impatience and empathy were constantly at odds. The drama was getting more intense due to the familial angle. Resurfaced were old interviews, which were now viewed suspiciously rather than nostalgically. In order to examine tone, pauses, and facial expressions, viewers slowed down conversations. Once supportive statements were reframed as passive cautions. Temporary arguments were now defined as unsolved disputes that never really went away. Supporters maintained that the signs had always been present, subtly incorporated into seemingly innocuous times. Online rumors claimed that the family's private conversations had become increasingly tense over time. Tense discussions, full of fear, denial, and tiredness were reported. People conjectured that family members battled between upholding her reputation and facing difficult truths. These conflicts, according to supporters, demonstrated concern and caring. Critics presented them as an effort to control harm, instead of dealing with underlying issues. Both sides spoke with confidence, but neither could prove anything. Reactions from fans were coming in from all sides. Some people were upset about. They claimed that their trust had been irreparably damaged and that they felt betrayed. Others reminded everyone that conjecture can ruin lives and encouraged patience. Comment sections had a strong emotional heated areas where fury, loyalty, and sadness clashed. Online friendships were put to the test as people adopted divergent opinions. Each was certain they were protecting something significant. The conversation then took a different turn as purported responses from those in her social circle started to surface, moving around, according to unnamed sources, worry, perplexity, and annoyance. According to these stories, the story's rapid growth seemed to overwhelm even those closest to the event. According to reports, some wished to speak up, but others were afraid of escalating an FIR that was already blazing. It was said that silence was both a form of punishment and protection. The health-related allegations continued to loom large, depending on who was interpreting it, completely altering its tone. Curiosity was replaced by fear. Excitement gave way to concern. Fans argued over whether it was morally acceptable to talk about such rumors without verification. Some contended that increasing awareness was crucial. Others maintained that reiterating unsubstantiated charges would only be detrimental. The conversation continued, though. No matter how unpleasant the concept made people feel, it would not go away once it was exposed. Official sources continued to remain silent, steady. And with every day that went by, that silence grew louder. Every absence has significance for people. Thought the silence was a sign of the truth. Others said it demonstrated self-control. Confusion rather than clarity resulted from the simultaneous circulation of all potential interpretations. It grew more difficult to distinguish between assumption and fact as time went on. The tale grew once more as conjecture intensified. Previous partnerships were re-examined. They reframed casual encounters as something more. Timelines were modified to align with hypotheses that validated pre-existing views. Fans dissected memories piece by piece, treating them like evidence. The story now depended on emotions, intuition, and group interpretation rather than facts. It was reported that people who were close to the situation were becoming more concerned about the long-term effects. Once reputations seldom do harmed people entirely heal. Relentless pressure can erode family ties. When privacy is lost, emotional health suffers. According to reports, several insiders believed the focus would soon shift to something else. Others believed that retreating would just increase suspicion, because the tension had already reached a breaking point. Fan spaces themselves started to feel the emotional impact of the discussion. Disagreement caused some societies to fall apart. In an effort to lessen harm, others enforced regulations to restrict conversation. Nevertheless, the narrative persisted in gaining traction outside of those limits, reaching individuals who had never previously followed carefully. They were drawn in by curiosity. Their engagement was maintained by controversy. But the way their personal history mingled with public expectations made the issue much more complicated. People frequently projected their personal experiences onto the narrative as they discussed growth, accountability, and forgiveness. Some witnessed someone making poor decisions in an attempt to deal with extreme stress. Others noticed trends they thought were impossible to ignore. By the time this stage of the debate reached a tense cadence, both stories were coexisting and driving the same discourse. It was evident that the tale had changed significantly since its inception, was no longer limited to relationships and gossip. It had come to represent how swiftly public perception can change, and belief can be strongly influenced by emotion. And even in the absence of confirmation, the weight of that view kept changing the story in ways that were difficult to manage. As the narrative proceeded to unfold, there was a discernible change in the discourse surrounding it. Fatigue, irritation, and anxiety started to blend with the curiosity that had previously propelled the conversation. Fans were responding to more than simply rumors. They were responding to the psychological damage those rumors were causing to all parties concerned. Some acknowledged that they were uneasy, even no longer keeping up with the discussion. They were unable to turn away, though. Unanswered questions were more alluring than hesitation. According to online comments, the pressure had escalated to the point where even minor actions were being exaggerated. A liked comment that disappeared minutes later, a post that was delayed, and an ambiguous caption. Everything was handled as a signal. Whether these events were deliberate or unintentional was a topic of discussion. Some thought they were communications intended for those who were listening. Others contended that these were pointless acts thrust into an already unmanageable story. Conversations centered more and more on the cost of living while being closely monitored. Fans discussed how being famous might obscure one's identity and make one's flaws public. Advocates contended that nobody should be reduced to conjecture in their existence. Critics retorted that recurring controversies highlighted legitimate concerns and that exposure came with accountability. As both teams defended, emotions were running high, their opinions frequently drawing from first-hand knowledge rather than supporting data. In these discussions, family loyalty emerged as a major subject. People wondered how much responsibility family members bear when a loved one passes away. Is under close examination. Silence was seen by some as a kind of defense. It was perceived by some as avoidance. Old family memories were recreated by fans, who now saw them through a tense and restrained lens. Once supportive conversations were reframed as cautious, laughter was examined for discomfort. Chatter circulated that the authenticity of affection was questioned. Behind-the-scenes private discussions were reportedly tense. These accounts detailed instances where worry and annoyance collided, making it difficult to find a solution. People conjectured that loved ones struggled to balance preservation and honesty. Supporters saw this as proof of take care. It was perceived by critics as image management. Nothing could be confirmed by either side. However, their confidence was influenced more by conviction than by evidence. As individuals started talking about long-term repercussions, the story became more somber. Fans were concerned about privacy, mental health, and the effects of ongoing criticism. Some disregarded those worries, contending that empathy shouldn't be used as an excuse to evade responsibility. Language became more acute, and the gap grew wider. The patients were slender, subtlety vanished. As health-related allegations continued to circulate, conversations that started out with curiosity turned hostile. The discomfort increased. Many wondered how such delicate subjects ended up in discussions that were motivated by amusement. There were those who claimed that terror was being employed as a means of drawing attention. Others maintained that discussion was necessary due to the gravity of the allegations. However, there was still no confirmation. Nothing to say appeared. Uncertainty persisted, looming over the story like a shadow that would not go away. Quietness from official sources persisted, and the number of interpretations increased. Some thought the silence was a sign that the truth was being controlled behind closed doors. Others thought it was a sign of tiredness and a reluctance to speculate. Each interpretation revealed more about the observer than the actual circumstances. Perception was affected by belief. Narrative was molded by perception. A story-driven response. The discussion started to impact spaces. Outside of fan communities, casual viewers voiced their comments frequently with strong opinions, but less background.